Good evening. I'm Stephen Romo in for Gadi Schwartz. And tonight, all eyes are on what TikTok's next move is going to be after this morning's Supreme Court ruling.
We're looking at TikTok. We may be banning TikTok. We may be doing some other things. We're not doing anything with TikTok, but the other side's going to close it up. So if you like TikTok, go out and vote for Trump.
Luca. Bueno. Piñu. Bueno. Piñu.
A lot of uncertainty and a lot of memes as the U.S. ban is set to go into effect on Sunday, which leaves 170 million users anxiously waiting to see how exactly Washington handles things. Our Savannah Sellers will be here with the latest. Plus, a critical security cabinet meeting in Israel concerning that ceasefire deal. How soon that could end the deadly airstrikes in Gaza. And plunging into a deep freeze. Temperatures throughout much of the country have plummeted to near Arctic levels. It's even putting Donald Trump's inauguration plans on ice, so to speak. We'll explain. Those are just some of the stories we're following, and there is a lot more to unpack. So let's get going, because this is Stay Tuned Now. And we begin tonight with the uncertain fate of TikTok, the wildly popular app used by more than 170 million Americans. Today, the Supreme Court weighing in, upholding a law that bans the social media giant in the U.S. unless it divests from its Chinese owner ByteDance. And that law set to go into effect this Sunday, just 2 days from now. The clock is ticking, but we don't have to freak out just yet. In a statement this afternoon, the Biden White House said they will not enforce the ban. Essentially, they're punting it to the incoming Trump administration to figure out what to do next. For his part, Trump wrote on social media that he needs time to review the situation, something the TikTok CEO seemed pretty optimistic about. Take a listen.
On behalf of everyone at TikTok and all our users across the country, I want to thank President Trump for his commitment to work with us to find a solution that keeps TikTok available in the United States.
Let's bring in NBC News Now anchor Savannah Sellers with more on this. So take us back, Savannah. What did TikTok originally sue the U.S. on? What grounds did they sue? And what does the decision mean today?
Yeah, that's a great question because it was very specific. It was on free speech grounds. It was saying this is a violation of the First Amendment. The justices unanimously, I might add, were very clear. They did not see this as a free speech concern. The issue is about selling away from ByteDance. The issue is this association with China. The issue is not free speech. And they went so far as to say, we're not singling out certain types of content. It's not like, hey, you can't do this anymore because we don't want to see videos of your cats or we don't want to see videos about hair care. It had nothing to do with the content. It was content agnostic were words that were actually in this opinion that we got from the Supreme Court. Therefore, they saw it as not a violation of freedom of speech. That really took the teeth out of TikTok's arguments and actually even so much so that it took the teeth kind of out of the creators' arguments, which maybe there was better hope for them to say, hey, this is impacting my speech if I can't go on and use this one particular app.
Yeah, unanimous, which is fairly rare for the Supreme Court nowadays. And I know that President-elect Trump had previously said that he's not a fan of TikTok, thought it was a national security issue, changed his tune on that. Biden now saying that he's not going to enforce this. What options does Trump have once he comes into office?
Yeah, Trump kind of like started this whole thing, which is what's interesting back in 2020, pointing out that he had a concern about national security. He's now been vocal on the complete other end of the spectrum, especially after meeting with the TikTok CEO, Schwartz, at Mar-a-Lago. They gave him some numbers about, you know, how he's done on the app, his popularity, the hashtags, the things related to him, information that he later shared himself on Truth Social. And now he has said directly out of his mouth, you've heard him say, I want to save TikTok. His national security advisor has recently been saying they have a plan to intervene. I think y'all made a super smart graphic that can kind of show us through some of the issues of it, or some of the options, I should say, that are on the table for the soon-to-be president. One of them is he could do basically what the Biden administration is saying that they are going to do for Sunday. So on Sunday, the Biden administration is saying, I'm not going to enforce this right now, meaning I'm not going to collect on those fines. Trump could, in theory, do that for his whole presidency if he wanted. Say, I'm not going to collect on those fines. It kind of means the law's not real. It doesn't, though, give the tech companies that much assurance, right? What if Trump doesn't like something that they do. Could he then turn around and say, actually, I'm going to enact that law because it's still a law? The other thing that he could potentially try to do, and there's been some reporting on this, that he could try to sort of be a deal maker here, right? Like get in the middle of making some type of sale happen. There's that graphic, making some type of sale happen. What's interesting there also is the law leaves the interpretation of what a qualified divestiture, it's called, that's a fancy way of basically saying that sale is okay with me, that satisfies me. That definition is up to the president. So maybe it could be something like an investment from, oh, I don't know, Elon Musk, or maybe Oracle, somebody there. Like, would that to him be, okay, that's enough, and then the law has been satisfied and those tech companies can kind of continue operating at ease?
Extremely murky, considering we just had a Supreme Court opinion on this. I did want to ask, though, this is a question I've had. When I go and hit that button, the app, on Sunday, what's going to happen?
I know. Here's the thing. I just seriously just got off the phone a little bit ago with a source. He said, and I can quote, it is totally up in the air. Like that is what is happening in these rooms right now, which is really kind of fascinating. What they are doing is having these active ongoing conversations with all of the companies that basically make TikTok work. Something like an Oracle that's hosting all their data. They're talking to Apple and Google. Are they going to keep offering it in the app stores? It's those companies who have to decide if they are willing to take the risk on Sunday. But Stephen, on the other hand, that means there's absolutely a chance, actually a very good chance, nothing changes. TikTok looks exactly like it does right now. I know if you've been on TikTok today, you've probably seen people crying, people screaming, people saying bad things about those justices. Because the headline sort of, the Supreme Court upheld the ban makes it seem that way, but there's absolutely a chance with the nuances here, and especially with what we've heard from the Biden administration, that the app keeps operating. Yeah, people are certainly grieving, people who depend on this for their livelihoods. Up in the air. Nobody knows it like Savannah Sellers. Thanks so much for breaking that down for us. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Cevallos for more on this. So, Danny, as we were just hearing from Savannah, the Supreme Court's decision today was unanimous in favor of upholding that ban. Were you surprised by that? And now that both Biden and Trump don't seem too keen on this ban, what do you think will end up happening?
I was somewhat surprised, but I understand the reasoning, because as soon as a court decides, well, this isn't infringing on First Amendment rights, and instead it's about who owns the company. And that was exactly the argument the Solicitor General made at oral argument before the Supreme Court. So because it seems the Supreme Court bought that argument, as soon as you remove the issue of the First Amendment from the case, it becomes much easier. If this is really only about who owns a company and not whether or not users or a company is having their speech suppressed, then this is exactly the kind of thing, at least according to the court, that that Congress is allowed to do. But, you know, legal aside, Supreme Court aside, that's only a small fraction of how chaotic this situation is, because we have an administration right now for the next couple of days who's indicating they're not going to enforce the law. And then the incoming administration apparently may not enforce the law either. And this is a law that not only with all federal statutes, you could say that the president has some power in determining whether or not he wants to enforce it. But this law has additional provisions that explicitly give the president even more power to decide how much and to what degree to enforce this law. Savannah gave you some examples, but the president has tremendous power to decide what is and what is not in violation of this federal statute, even though it survives.
Yeah, the fate of this incredibly murky. SCOTUS has weighed in on this now. So does TikTok have any legal options left unless they sell it? Is there anything they can do?
Never in American history has a corporation had more uncertainty about its immediate future. And by immediate, I mean the next couple days until Monday. And then Monday, TikTok's existence changes completely as well. And even from now, between now and then, the Biden administration saying it's not going to enforce and fine all these companies. We're talking about an administration that will be in effect when the law goes into effect for a matter of hours. TikTok, if you're TikTok's management, you have no idea what your immediate future is, but you're feeling pretty confident because no matter what the Supreme Court said, you can see, and you saw it in that sound from TikTok management, that they're really putting their chips in with the administration and not the language of the federal statute.
An odd place to be, likely more of it. NBC's Danny Cevallos, thank you so much. Well, for a large stretch of the country, it's about to get really cold this weekend. A major Arctic outbreak is going to tank temperatures to 40 degrees below average in some places starting on Sunday. That means some cities are going to see temps in the single digits, even negatives on the coldest days. Blizzard conditions are already affecting parts of the Midwest and Canada, making it hard to see and get around in some of those parts. Some are unbothered by the cold, like this herd. Take a look.
This isn't gorillas in the mist, it's cows in the snow. They're pretty happy. They're still out here chewing their bales, these ones.
Oh, how I long to be as unbothered as those cows. Some cities are already seeing snow. There's more coming. Up to 5 inches could fall in parts of the Northeast over a 12-hour period. It's expected to get so cold that it's affecting President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration ceremony. We'll have more on that coming up in a few minutes. But first, let's go to NBC's Adrian Broadus in Chicago. So, Adrian, it's winter, so of course cold weather is expected, but this Arctic blast could actually end up being pretty dangerous for people in some parts of the country if they aren't careful, right?
Stephen, that's right. This is the type of weather that can be extremely dangerous if people are not prepared. Just take an example with the wind chills. If you step outside and you're exposed, your skin that is, within minutes, frostbite can set in. Hypothermia is also another risk. And in parts of the country, as you mentioned, they are expected to be 20 to 40 degrees below average tonight. In some parts of the Midwest, specifically North Dakota and Minnesota, there's a blizzard warning. On tomorrow, the wind gusts are expected to be between 30 and 60 miles per hour, which could create some treacherous conditions out there on the road, Stephen.
Oh, just brutal thinking about. And as far as travel impacts on this, Adrian, what are we looking at there?
You know what, let's look at Amtrak, for example. They have already taken steps to put safety first, canceling some of the routes that were expected to either start here in Chicago or end in Chicago. We're specifically talking about that route from Seattle to Chicago. It is not going to run on Monday. Amtrak representatives simply say it's difficult to maintain rails in frigid conditions with such a lengthy trip. So as you can imagine, cold weather can have a significant impact on the switches, which allows those trains to move between lines on their journey. That is a particular line that passes through parts of Minnesota and the Dakotas. Stephen?
In some places, it's going to be the situation to stay at home if you can. Adrian Broadus, thank you so much. All right, for more, let's bring in NBC News meteorologist Michelle Grossman. So, Michelle, break it down for us. Who's going to be feeling this Arctic blast the most?
So many of us, and we're going to be feeling it for a while. Take a look at this. We have the jet stream so far to the south. What does that do? It kind of opens the air, that Arctic air to Canada, lets it all the way down to the south. And we're looking at temperatures 10, 20, 30, even 40 degrees below what is typical for this time of year. Take a look at some of these numbers. This is tomorrow. We're looking at single digits, teens in some spots, but it's the wind chill. It's going to feel like minus 11 tomorrow in Minneapolis, feeling like just 25 in Oklahoma City, feeling like 33 in Lubbock. So you get the idea. That cold air is pretty far south. Sunday, even colder than that. We're looking at temperatures in Minneapolis feeling like 21 below zero. That's where we're getting worried about frostbite. 18 is what it's going to feel like in Tulsa. 23 is the wind chill in Huntsville, and 31 in Jackson. That will be the wind chill. The air temperature just 39 degrees. Then as we go throughout the rest of the week or next week, the beginning of the week, we're looking at temperatures not going very far. Still in the single digits in Chicago, 8 degrees on Monday, 5 degrees on Tuesday. We are cold in New York City too, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Below freezing all days, but only in the teens as your high temperature on Tuesday and Wednesday. Atlanta, you're going to stay cold as well. Below freezing on Monday, right at the freezing mark on Tuesday, and 36 on Wednesday. That means a very cold day on Monday. A couple factors here. We're looking at air temperatures very cold in the 20s, well below freezing by 9 o'clock, 20 degrees, 22 by 12, and we're actually going to go down a degree by 3 p.m. But it's not just the temperatures. We're going to have snow falling the day before, snow on the ground, people standing outside. So that's going to be really tough. Some people are even saying bring a little piece of cardboard that you can stand on, kind of have a little bit of differential between that cold sidewalk and also the ground. But take a look at these winds gusting up to 25 miles per hour. That's going to make it feel like 5 to 10. So for a long period of time, that gets dangerous. You want to wear lots of layers, kind of cover any exposed skin. And this will go down as one of the coldest inaugurations in history. The coldest one on record was back in 1985, the second inauguration of Ronald Reagan, 7 degrees. That ceremony was also held indoors. It was certainly cold, and it will certainly be cold this Monday.
Oof, painful to even think about. Michelle, thanks so much.
Sure.
And as Michelle just mentioned, that Arctic blast is changing President-elect Trump's inauguration as well. Monday's ceremony has now been moved indoors to the Capitol Rotunda. The last time this happened, as Michelle mentioned, 1985 for Ronald Reagan at 7 degrees. NBC's Kelly O'Donnell has more.
This is rare. It has been 4 decades since weather caused a significant adjustment to the iconic ceremony. The traditional parade is also going through changes, some of it moving inside. And officials are working on the adjustments, working on the changes, and they have a message for the public, urging people not to congregate in places like this and to stay warm. Tonight, frigid weather becomes the first clear threat to safety for Monday's inauguration. President-elect Trump on social media, "I don't want to see people hurt or injured," as he announced, "I have ordered the inauguration address, prayers, and other speeches to be delivered in the United States Capitol Rotunda," noting the same move inside happened for Ronald Reagan.
So help me God.
Mr. Trump said the ceremony could be watched inside Washington's 20,000-seat Capital One arena. Contingency planning prepared for changes, including weather.
The threat environment obviously changes as we move along. So we look at all of those different areas and we plan from the ground up.
The U.S. Secret Service is leading this national special security event involving more than 25,000 responders. A secure perimeter includes a record 30 miles of anti-scale fencing. Drones deliver expansive visibility from above. Police robots ready to check packages and places for dangerous materials. Washington Special Agent in Charge, Matt McCool.
There's no stone unturned. There is no threat that is not mitigated.
What happened?
Shaped by real-world crises like the summer assassination attempt.
You'll see people on roofs. You'll see lots of officers and agents on roofs.
And the deadly New Year's car attack in New Orleans.
It starts with no vehicles, then it starts with checkpoints, and then it gets a little bit tighter as we get closer.
Here, NBC News has exclusive access to this multi-agency communications center, where teams of experts from across government, 40 agencies, track and triage any issues, with all levels of law enforcement out on patrol. Securing the city also means guarding the water. Local authorities out on the Potomac to detect anyone using the river to get close to official events. Also at the ready, air support. Fairfax County is able to keep watch and fly in life-saving medical services if needed.
We have to get it right. It's a no-fail operation, and I believe we're as well prepared as we ever have been.
Tested by brutal cold and varied threats to safeguard Washington's biggest stage. Kelly O'Donnell, NBC News.
An up-close look. Kelly, thanks. And you can watch coverage of the inauguration of Donald Trump starting at 10 a.m. Eastern on Monday on NBC and NBC News Now. And breaking news we're following now out of the Middle East. Israel's full cabinet just voted on that long-awaited Gaza ceasefire deal, approving it. It's set to go into effect on Sunday. NBC's Richard Engel has more.
It has been more than 15 months of war, sorrow, and destruction. Gaza obliterated, nearly 47,000 people dead. And Israel reeling after a savage Hamas terrorist attack killed 1,200 people, 250 taken hostage. Tonight, it may be ending. Israel's cabinet agreeing to the ceasefire and hostage deal to go into effect Sunday. But it will be a slow process. Israel will end its assault on Gaza and release Palestinian prisoners. But a permanent ceasefire is still to be negotiated. And Hamas has agreed to release 33 of its hostages in the first phase. But only 3 are expected to be released Sunday, according to Israeli media. Daniel Lifshitz thinks he'll wait several weeks before he sees his 84-year-old grandfather, Oded.
What's going through your mind?
First of all, I'm really happy. Of course, until it's done, I'm trying to stay calm until it's done, because we are dealing with the worst people on planet Earth, the worst terrorist exists.
We visited Oded's house just after October 7th.
Here, the whole roof collapsed.
Hamas shot Oded, kidnapped him and his wife, and burned their house down. Tonight, Daniel telling us he's been desperately waiting for a deal.
So why now, do you think?
Trump being elected.
In Gaza, at a soup kitchen, 8-year-old Aboud Abu Zaidi is waiting too, here for hours with his pot to take home to his family. The crowds are so big, he says he often leaves empty-handed. When I heard there was a ceasefire, I was happy. Here, there's no food, he says. When the distribution begins, the chaos is total and tragic. Aboud manages to get some rice and runs off. This is what Gaza has been reduced to after 15 months of war and siege. With the deal, fragile as it is, there's a chance for relief.
As for the hostage release, families tell us they've been told to expect the first 3 will be women.
Richard Engel reporting for us. Richard, thanks. Now let's take a look at some of the other stories happening around the world tonight. The pop quiz, what do you get when two countries cement their animosity toward the West together? How about a 20-year partnership treaty between Russia and Iran? That deal signed today in the Kremlin will boost cooperation in a wide range of areas between the two countries, from military to education to culture. And staying in Russia, 3 lawyers who once represented the late opposition leader Alexei Navalny were convicted of dissent charges. The 3 men were arrested back in 2023 on charges of being involved with extremist groups. The U.S. State Department condemned those sentences, saying the 3 lawyers were simply doing their jobs. And remember that South Korean airline that crashed last month, killing 179 people? Well, it turns out bird feathers and blood were found in the plane's engines. Officials say a pilot did report a bird strike minutes before that deadly crash. And despite telling its citizens that having babies is patriotic, China has seen its population decline for the 3rd straight year. So much so that hospitals there are closing their obstetrics units. It's coming at a time when China is facing an aging population and a shortage of working-age people. Well, don't go anywhere. We are just getting started tonight. Up next, Angelenos helping Angelenos. The massive relief efforts underway in Southern California, collecting anything you can imagine for those who have lost everything. And later this hour, dreamers on edge ahead of President-elect Trump's return to office. The uncertainty for 500,000 people. Our David Noriega has that story ahead. Stay tuned. Welcome back. 8 more people have now been charged with crimes relating to the wildfires out in L.A. We're talking charges ranging from arson to possession of ammunition to looting, even impersonating a firefighter. Meanwhile, the real firefighters are working to get control of almost 35,000 acres of ongoing wildfires. The Palisades fire is a little more than 31% contained, while the Eden fire is at 65% containment. Those are the 2 largest wildfires. We've seen a breakout in the last 10 days, and so far, they've taken at least 27 lives. Tens of thousands of people still don't know if their homes are still standing, and they need basic things like clothes and food. Thankfully, the LA community has their backs. NBC's Ellison Barber joins us now from Altadena with more on this. And Ellison, there's just been so much destruction. It's been easy to get lost in what the situation is right now. What can you tell us what's going on right now?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a really tough situation for everyone who lives in Los Angeles County, particularly the communities hit hardest. I mean, we're in Altadena, and in the last couple of hours, some residents have been allowed to go home to see their homes for the first time, and the damage of them. For a lot of people, though, restaurants, local places like this are becoming really kind of a safe haven, a place where they can come, get a free meal, a warm meal. They can bring their kids to run around, to laugh, to play, to just sort of be together and feel like they're part of the community. This is a really popular restaurant, Home State, and they're about I don't know, 2 blocks, maybe a couple miles from where the Eaton fires stopped. They said, we feel so lucky to be standing. We wanted to do something. So they partnered with World Central Kitchen. And tonight, tomorrow night, and the next few days, they'll be here giving members of this community free food and a place to gather and hopefully feel a little bit normal. Listen to what the owner had to say.
I think people are finding out about this community for the first time, probably, you know, in this country for sure and around the globe. And it has been such a tight, well-kept secret. Like, Altadena and Pasadena, it's such a sweet community, working class. People, generations have raised families here. And it's just such a rich and vibrant community.
And Stephen, one thing she said was part of why we felt like it was really important to be open today and to be open through the weekend is we want to make sure this community knows we're not going anywhere. A lot of people are feeling anxious because there are some wind alerts heading into next week. And for a lot of people who have been through all of this trauma, they're scared. And so she said this is important to make them feel safe and like they have some familiarity in the neighborhood that they've called home for so long. Stephen.
Yeah, these disasters can be so isolating. It's so great to see them gathering like that, Allison. And I understand there was another huge relief effort that happened at Dodger Stadium today. What can you tell us about that one?
Yeah, that was put on by 13 different LA sports teams, the LA Dodgers among them. We were there with a national nonprofit called Baby to Baby, and the work they do is extraordinary. They work year round and they try to focus their efforts on helping kids ages 0 to 12, providing them with essential items, whether they live in poverty or if they're experiencing some sort of disaster or traumatic event like this. We spoke to the co-CEO of Baby to Baby, both of them. This is some of what they told us.
Rebuilding and getting people back on their feet is going to take a long time. I think people who have lost their homes and have been evacuated lost their jobs, and a lot of people lost businesses. So these, I think, we're looking at months and years to come, and we're ready and here for the long haul for these families.
You know, Stephen, these people, these are the bright spots of these wildfires. People who are from this community, no matter what they do, whether they own a restaurant like this, whether they run a national nonprofit, they are all showing up saying, how do we stand up for each other? How do we help our neighbors? How do we make sure people feel taken care of and seen? And more importantly, treated with respect and dignity. And for these organizations, that is through a warm meal, that is through making sure they're not just giving them used clothes or items, but they're actually taking the time to put it in a shopping bag so they feel seen. All of it, the little bits of glimmer of hope when it's so daunting when you hear those numbers of the acres burned, over 12,000 structures destroyed. This recovery is going to take a long time, but these people, this community, Stephen, they're really leaning on each other.
Yeah, certainly glad to hear that they are leaning on each other and getting some much needed assistance. Allison Barber, great coverage out there. We certainly appreciate you tonight. Thank you. And here are some of the other headlines we're watching tonight. President Biden commuting the sentences of more than 2,000 people today. They were all convicted of nonviolent drug offenses. Biden has now issued more pardons and commutations than any other president in history. Medicare announcing 15 new drugs up for price negotiations, including Ozempic and Wegovy. The popular diabetes and weight loss drugs have faced backlash over their high prices. The negotiations will take place with drug makers over the coming months. Those prices, though, won't take effect until 2027. Well, VP-elect J.D. Vance's Senate seat is now filled. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine picking Lieutenant Governor John Husted for the seat. He'll hold that seat through 2026. 5 Massachusetts college students pleaded not guilty on kidnapping and conspiracy charges. We told you a few days ago they're accused of luring a man to their campus and assaulting him. This alleged crime resembled the viral Catch a Predator trend on TikTok. The students are due back in court in March. And a rare Olympic medal was just sold for over $500,000. It was awarded during the first games on U.S. soil in 1904 in St. Louis. The medal sold at auction comes with the original ribbon and leather case, and it is the real thing, made entirely of gold, unlike the medals nowadays. Welcome back. Over on Capitol Hill, another day, another confirmation hearing. In the hot seat today, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, Trump's pick to lead the Department of Homeland Security. Now, if confirmed, she'll oversee Customs and Border Protection, but that doesn't mean she'll necessarily be the one calling the shots when it comes to immigration. And that's something Democratic Senator Andy Kim pressed her on today.
I'm uncertain about roles and responsibilities regarding your position and Tom Homan's. I guess I just want to ask you just point blank, like, who's going to be in charge of the border?
Well, the president will be in charge of the border. It's a national security issue, and the president is in charge of this country and has made a promise to the American people, and we will fulfill his agenda.
If the president asks you to send in federal law enforcement to a state without coordination of that governor, would you support that action?
You know, Senator, my job, if nominated and sworn in as Secretary of Homeland Security, is to uphold the Constitution and to uphold the rules of this country.
NBC's Garrett Haake has more from Capitol Hill. Garrett?
A marathon week up here with 13 different confirmation hearings came to a close today with a fairly short hearing for Kristi Noem, Donald Trump's pick to lead the Department of Homeland Security. Noem, on her own, is a bit controversial. We know the story about the dog she used to have. She's a former House member turned governor of South Dakota. But this hearing was really a proxy fight about Donald Trump's immigration policies, of which she will have a role in conducting oversight and kind of running the immigration portfolio. But it won't be as big as, say, Alejandro Mayorkas's is under President Biden. Nevertheless, you heard from the Republicans on this panel saying they expect her to get confirmed, they hope, with bipartisan support.
I don't see a reason why the Democrats would maybe not let her go on Monday. Yeah, I think it's going to be bipartisan. I think I'm hopeful the Democrats will allow the vote to happen on Monday. That'll happen at the leadership level in a negotiation.
If she doesn't get any Democratic support, it's just pure politics.
But it's for that reason that I don't see Kristi Noem getting many Democratic votes, if any at all. The Trump immigration policies are among the most controversial things that he has put forward. And Noem, I think, for Democrats, is a fairly safe place to park a no vote and show you're standing up to Donald Trump, even if you're going to turn around on the same day and vote for Marco Rubio, for example, or Scott Bessent to be Treasury Secretary. So we'll be watching very closely to see if this is the kind of thing that can be rushed in confirmation land. Can they get this done on Monday or Tuesday? It would take agreement from Democrats to do that. Again, I think this is the kind of appointment where you may see Democrats pump the brakes here a little bit, get caught fighting against someone who will be essentially the public face of some very controversial policies going forward.
All right, Garrett Haake, thanks so much. And some breaking news tonight. NBC News has seen a document that shows the incoming Trump administration's plans to conduct a major immigration enforcement operation in at least one city next week. We don't know yet what city will be targeted, but sources familiar with the planning tell NBC News that early enforcement could hit the D.C. area, as well as Philadelphia, Los Angeles, Denver, and Chicago. NBC's David Noriega has more on how immigrants around the country with and without legal status are scrambling to prepare for what's next.
In the federal courthouse in downtown Phoenix,
please raise your right hand and repeat after me.
Yulisa Noriega becomes an American citizen today.
And congratulations to our newest U.S. citizen.
And while that's a big deal for Yulisa, it's an even bigger deal for her husband, Miguel.
I said to myself, I'm going to be there in about 4 years.
Esa fue la razón principal, el poder ayudarlo.
Help him fix his own papers after decades as a dreamer, and just under the wire before a new term under Donald Trump could throw 500,000 like him into uncertainty. Miguel was 6 when his parents brought him to Phoenix from Mexico City, crossing the border without papers. 10 years ago, he was granted DACA, an Obama-era program for those brought to the country unlawfully as children. DACA got him a work permit, and it created a pathway, though a long and difficult one, to legal status. DACA is now on the ropes, facing court challenges and a president-elect who says the program is illegal and tried to end it in his first term. Trump has also said he'd like to find a different fix for dreamers.
You said once back in 2017, they, quote, shouldn't be very worried about being deported. Should they be worried now?
We have to do something about the dreamers, because these are people that have been brought here at a very young age, and many of these are middle-aged people now. They don't even speak the language of their country.
At the same time, in his first term, Trump put up obstacles not only for undocumented immigrants, but for legal ones as well.
The Trump administration cut legal immigration in virtually every category, in virtually every way that you can think of.
Immigration lawyers like Yasser Sanchez haven't forgotten those years. Under the first Trump administration, how did his moves on legal immigration specifically, how did that affect your business and the business that your office does?
It made a simple case such as a citizenship go from 4, 6, 8 to 12 months. So between 30 to 50 green card cases a month, dropped to 3 to 5 a month.
So now, Sanchez and attorneys across the country say they can't take any chances, and they're accelerating every case they can.
Any case that we can get in now, before January 20th, we're pushing through. And we're talking about legal immigration. We're talking about people with clean files. We want to make sure that they get in because we don't know what's coming.
Among those cases, Yulisa's citizenship. And now Miguel's green card too, which he just became eligible for now that his wife is an American.
Her becoming a U.S. citizen opens the gates to America, basically, for Miguel.
2024.
And then we'll get this out to immigration.
As of today, you're an American citizen. And Miguel now has options that he didn't have before. How does that make you feel?
I'm happy. I'm excited.
We were rushing to make sure that this gets done. I am relieved. It's a big relief.
Miguel's green card application will take months to process. But with the paperwork filed, the future feels a little bit more certain. So where do you see yourselves in 5 years?
You know, it's hard. It's hard that they ask that question. What do you see yourself in 5 years? I never said anything. Whatever life gave me is what I would answer. Now, with this, I can say, what am I going to be doing in 5 years? Is probably working hard and having a family together.
Certainly a lot more to come. David Noriega, thanks so much. And up next, major flames shooting into the Northern California sky. What we're learning about the fire at a battery storage plant ahead in out west. Welcome back. Here are some of the stories we're following out west. Another California fire, this one erupting at a battery storage plant in the northern part of the state. It's one of the biggest plants of its kind, storing thousands of lithium batteries. More than 1,000 people were told to evacuate the surrounding area, and it's still unclear what started that fire. Matthew Mueller pleaded guilty to new sexual assault charges today. He's the convicted kidnapper and rapist from the Netflix documentary American Nightmare. Mueller is already serving 40 years. He's scheduled to be sentenced for these new charges coming next month. And Oakland's former mayor Sheng Tao has been indicted on federal bribery charges after an FBI investigation into an alleged pay-for-play scheme. Prosecutors say her boyfriend was the one who helped set that whole thing up, and he was also indicted. Well, we have a major update on the looming TikTok ban. Just minutes ago, TikTok revealing that it will be forced to go dark. I repeat, TikTok will go dark on Sunday unless the Biden administration clarifies their stance immediately. Here's the statement. The statements issued today by both the Biden White House and the Department of Justice have failed to provide the necessary clarity and assurance to the service providers that are integral to maintaining TikTok's availability to over 170 million Americans. TikTok goes on to say, unless the Biden administration immediately provides a definitive statement to satisfy the most critical service providers assuring non-enforcement, unfortunately, TikTok will be forced to go dark on January 19th. More to come on that one for sure. Well, it has been 10 days since the start of the Eden fire, which has devastated much of Pasadena and Altadena. And one girl's idea to help those affected is inspiring so many others in a very big way. Morgan Chesky has more.
At a warehouse in East Los Angeles, the donations are nonstop. And behind every gifted good is a 14-year-old doing something great.
We are moving so incredibly fast, faster than I could have ever imagined.
When flames took her beloved Altadena school, then left dozens of friends homeless, Avery Colvert knew she had to help.
These girls don't have anything, and I want them to feel confident in themselves again.
So she launched Altadena Girls on Instagram, seeking donations for clothing, makeup, skincare, and shoes. And within 24 hours, watch donations pour in.
I got new pants and a jacket that's super soft. And so one jacket means the absolute world when you have 0 jackets.
Avery's efforts not lost on anyone. Paris Hilton sharing the cause. The 14-year-old even meeting Meghan Markle, who encouraged her to keep going.
It's so easy to share things. And I mean, that's how I think we got so big.
Her Altadena Girls page so successful, she inspired a sequel.
So this is what Altadena Boys is all about.
Yeah. Its counterpart now up and running too, offering teen guys a one-stop shop from body wash to ball caps, all free of charge.
You always see like all the debris or like still like the ashes around, and it's kind of like sad, but seeing like everyone like happy in one spot kind of just like brings me up a bit.
A cause bringing the comforts of home exactly where they need to be. Morgan Chesky, NBC News.
Some much-needed help and a much-needed bright spot. Morgan Chesky, thanks so much. Well, many of the families devastated by the California wildfires connecting with each other, but they're also connecting with people across the country who understand what it's like to lose everything to Mother Nature. One family turned their grief into action, joining a mission to raise awareness about the role of climate change in these disasters. Chase Kane has that story.
The orange tree out front used to match the front door of the Moreno's dream home in Altadena, but not anymore.
We chose to remodel that house to make it a home for our daughters, and it's the backdrop of every memory I was going to have.
Of course, everything that matters I have, and yet, like, I'm staring at the home that we built and the life that we built, you know, and the community, and a lot of that is gone.
But they are hoping to channel this pain into something more positive by joining a group called Extreme Weather Survivors. Basically, it's Americans from all over the country who have experienced disasters like this. So they come together, they can support one another, but maybe more importantly, so that they can use their voices to let other people know this is not just a disaster. This is a disaster amplified by climate change.
Connecting with survivors was something I don't think we knew how sort of like comforting that would feel. And
that it existed, but none of us know what to do.
And I think what's really beautiful is when you start to connect people to one another, where you don't start the conversation with climate change, but instead start with, you're hurting, how can I help? And then people start to understand this, what we're up against.
Sierra co-founded Extreme Weather Survivors less than a year ago, and in just that short time, the U.S. has experienced at least 23 major disasters, costing upwards of $200 billion and claiming more than 500 Americans' lives.
This is not an individual problem or an individual state problem. We have got to work together. We have to.
Because the Morenos and so many other Americans from coast to coast keep facing the same painful truth that climate change doesn't care where you live or who you voted for.
A beautiful thing about Altadena is the great diversity, socioeconomic, race, political belief, and all our houses burnt down. You know, it didn't care.
We're all impacted. We all were trying to work jobs and trying to build this little life. And so we have to have the conversation. And not just conversations, but say, yeah, I'm willing to like figure out what it is that we can do to make this different, change the course.
In Altadena, I'm National Climate Reporter Chase Kane.
Before we go, it's time for the future of everything. Hitting the road, our Brian Chung checked out the self-driving taxi that has generated a lot of buzz at CES this year. He takes us for a spin coming up next. Welcome back. Tonight in the Future of Everything, we're taking a look at the new advancements in robotaxis. But first, some of the other tech and science stories we're following. The FAA has ordered SpaceX to carry out an investigation into the breakup of its Starship rocket. These images came from the flaming debris plummeting back to Earth yesterday. SpaceX says its initial data showed a fire was the reason for that destruction. And the Milky Way is unveiled in the most detailed map ever. The image is based on data from ESA's star mapping satellite Gaia, which launched all the way back in 2013. And although it's almost out of fuel now, Gaia is expected to give us more data on the Milky Way by 2026. Now, would you trust a rideshare without a human driver? That's the billion-dollar question for big tech as the auto industry prepares for the era of driverless robotaxis. Brian Chung shows us one company's vision for a self-driving future.
Maybe it's the conversation.
So where are you from?
Or worrying about the driver's rating.
How does this guy not even have 4 stars?
Robotaxis are selling the promise of a future where a ride doesn't have any of that because it doesn't have a driver. Elon Musk unveiled a self-driving Tesla last year.
Just arrived in the Robotaxi.
And Google-owned Waymo is already offering rides in San Francisco and Los Angeles. At Amazon-owned company Zoox, AI has helped these self-driving test vehicles adapt to the roads of Las Vegas.
That lets us train and validate our software, and then when it's ready to drive all by itself, we put it on the Robotaxi. This is it.
This is the Robotaxi?
Yeah.
It looks like a carriage.
It kind of is a carriage, yeah. It's a robot carriage.
No hood, no trunk, and inside, no pedals and no steering wheel.
So cool. Shall we go for a ride?
Let's do it. There we go.
As we ride, the Robotaxi analyzes everything else around it in real time.
It has to many, many, many times every second understand the state of the world around it, make predictions, and then plan the best trajectory.
The state of the world today, a lane closure on the Las Vegas Strip.
We approached it, kind of came over, and now we're in another lane.
But other robotaxi companies have hit snags, with GM saying it will shelve its cruise program due to costs. And one man in the Phoenix area even getting stuck in a Google Waymo, which the company says lasted only 5 minutes.
I got a flight to catch.
Zoox under investigation itself for 2 reported incidents when test vehicles unexpectedly braked, causing minor injuries to 2 motorcyclists. Zoox saying it works with regulators and state and local governments.
I see an emergency button up here, too.
That's another way to tell the Robotaxi, we want to stop.
Safety remains the top concern, with just 20% of consumers who've never ridden in a robotaxi saying they feel confident in one.
The systems are going to encounter situations that they cannot necessarily handle perfectly. That's something I could say about human drivers as well.
Robotaxi makers are hoping to convince users that their vehicles are smarter than the average driver. One maker of those robotaxi brains is NVIDIA, whose chips can learn off of real road conditions and even simulate ones that may not exist yet.
Like the large language model got invented with ChatGPT, but now people are doing video language models for self-driving cars. And that type of algorithm needs a much more powerful compute.
But if the robotaxi does its job well, the average rider shouldn't notice the difference, even if the seating is different.
It's weird to look directly at the person that you're talking to in a ride.
Levinson predicting that the change will soon feel less dramatic.
And the idea of getting in an elevator without a human seemed kind of scary at the time. But eventually, there was enough data to show that elevators are actually incredibly safe.
Do you think that robotaxis are going to be as prevalent as elevators someday?
I do think so, yes.
Brian Chung bringing us the scoop on the Robotaxi. That's going to do it for us tonight. I'm Stephen Romo. We'll see you next week, but until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.